So we're going to start this with my introduction of Robert Kryder of Kryder Exploration, Research and Recovery. Far better it is to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to rank with those timid souls who neither enjoy much nor suffer much. And that kind of wraps this project up in one paragraph. That's Theodore Roosevelt. How it all started. The prime discovery was this crucifix boulder. Now, a lot of people refer to this as a cross, but in all actuality, it's not a cross, because it has a flared base and it's open at the bottom. That makes this a crucifix, which is an item. An item is placed in a location, which tells us this is the location of the placement. If you understand that logic, this is how information can be transmitted down through time, because it's all based on basic understanding. The story starts with Simba Jeff, who's a member of our team. We call him Simba Jeff because he's about like a drunk wolf most of the time, but the guy can find anything. He finds everything. So after I met him for a while, he got into what we were doing for other groups and parties. I said, you know what, you need to go find me a crucifix on a boulder. Within a month, Jeff came back with a crucifix on a boulder. One of the most amazing things I've ever seen, because the area had been mined in the middle of a coal mining region, and about the only hill that had never been touched was this particular hill. And when we actually got to looking and doing the analytical work on the hill, we found miners' tags. And Terry wasn't on any of them.
I wasn't, man. What's up with that? Because I've known you for a long time. Sorry to derail you, but some of these guys can't hear you, so you can talk louder or put it closer to your mouth.
Okay, sounds good.
Man, talk louder.
All right, I'll try to do that. I get back to you, so I don't know how loud it is out there. Let me know. Thank you, guys. So either way, so Jeff finds the crucifix rocks in 2004, and just what we were kind of looking for. On this, there's a little bit of symbolism that tells us a lot of information. The crucifix, of course, as I explained before, has a large open bottom, which means in place at this location. Up to the left, we see a small notch made with a chisel. That notch means entrance, which means it's not something that's buried in the ground and covered over. It instantly indicates that there's an entrance to a structure of some type or another that a royal church treasure has been encased in. Being where we are in a coal-bearing seamed country with sandstone cap, we did not expect any mineralization to be there, because no one's in the world at this point in time except one location had ever really found gold of any nature in conjunction with coal. But we did a monument survey. Let's try to see what's here. Because we had to wonder, why would they have dug tunneling in here and put it here? But every time we did, like this monument in particular, where we have a mushroom, and on its cap is an inverted mushroom cut into it. And to the lower right is a triangle. Well, everything here tells me there's a supported structure, and the cap's gone subterranean. So it's got to be deep. As well, there was what you can consider a large viper or rattlesnake head. And no other body, nothing visible, which tells us something of that nature is hidden. The snakes always represented secrets, great secrets in that sense, and that evolution of understanding went right down through the Jesuits. I'm not going to go too many monuments, but we're accelerating to one of the most important, which was this profile of what you'd say is a royal man. And the way we see that is by abundance, and abundance meaning he looks fat. In the early eras, anyone that held any weight on them had abundance, because only the royalty usually did that, because other people couldn't afford to live that way. So in this case, we look for abundance, we look for overkill, and this is what we find. Now this is just up to the left of the cross on the boulder, the crucifix on the boulder. So we fired a line across this rock, and it is up to the left just as the entrance notch would be. And in the cliff behind the head there, we can actually see a couple of things, which is an overhang. And then up to the right, there's kind of a rock all by itself, kind of reddish, it looks like a mouth. That means below to the right. So we already had kind of a frequency and a direction. So it took us to phase one, the scanning. So that same area now is lined with the yellow line, and this was where we decided to take our first scans because this is the location they're saying, telling to us, go pay attention. Later we learned why. And the first scan was done with a Rover C, OKM technology that was very early. It's passive geomagnetic, so it just picks up the Earth's magnetic field encountering different items. In this case, it's a non-ferrous geometric target. Non-ferrous means it does not generate a magnetic field, but it will carry electrons. So we see this light blue turquoise color in the scan. That's an extremely good sign. This is another rendition of this, and you can see a little flare off to the right. That's just what that is. That's electrons being blown off the target by the Earth's EM field. Here's another version that shows it graphically in 3 dimensions. It shows the wall of a chamber and descending cliff, and then the target positioned inside this. It's not to scale on depth. This is another one where it's superimposed, and you'll notice that the topography of the cliff wall extended underground, and that was mapped with the OKM Rover C. Most people don't think this technology, even some of the developers, that it was capable of mapping in this type of dimension. But with proper cribbing and work and analysis it is. So, the first area excavation, the depth test, clearing area to scan. So we already had these preliminary scans. Now we need to remove material and take another look. And if that disappears, we have a problem. Even though we repeated first scanning. So you can see here what it takes to get a backhoe into position sometimes. There's certainly no roads in these areas, so it's just we got to work them the way you got to work. Here we're creating a scanned area, so we're making a flat zone that we can control and begin to evaluate depth. Now we're trying to see, now it didn't come up in this first dig, 8 feet, 9 feet deep. We're trying to see, okay, how deep is it going to be in the next scan? What's my change? And I can get a good look, and I mentioned that for a good reason. Here you can see me scanning with the rover feet with about 12 feet of excavation at the back wall removed, but now I've got a flat zone to get results. And these are the results. So what we see here is the same rectangular scan showing a non-ferrous target. This should be either gold, silver, potentially lead, or even copper, but copper would generally throw a different type of halo or whatever. But at the same time, we know this is a valuable metal. We know that something's been put there, and now it's repeating and scan after 10 foot of earth removal. We are now seeing down into the room. And we also notice to the left, something showing up additionally. So what are we going to do? We're going to dig deeper. We're going to pull more material off, create another pad, and we're going to rescan this thing and see how much we're approaching with each dirt removal. That's going to tell us how far it is below our feet. It's also going to verify any targets, because now we should get a clearer view. Again, this is looking down to show your depth on top of the backhoe. Now you get an estimate in between scanning it just how much material we've actually moved in this picture. And this is what we see. So the area was rescanned in the exact same plot, and now we don't just see the upper stack, let's say. We see a number of them. Each one of these stacks would represent about 2 feet wide and 4 feet long. Now you can imagine one stack, if the smelted gold that size, and proportionately as tall as it is wide, would be something like 70,000 pounds of gold in one stack. And here we're showing multiple stacks in the room showing up. We have a problem, and that problem is the big red feature on the side. It seems to be blocking our view. So what is that feature? Under careful data analysis and triggering of the data, we start to reveal its shape, and it is determined it's one of 2 things. It's either an iron cannon or it's a coffin. Now, people say, well, why would anyone have an iron coffin? But actually, the Jesuit priests were often required to use an iron coffin for their remains to be shipped back. And they became one of the most popular smuggling items, because no one would open the coffin of the priest, period. So they'd stuff them full and haul them back to Europe. But how do we get inside? Our depth has now shown us, by doing this excavation, that this room is 110 feet deep below the surface. People don't believe you can use passive magnetics, especially a rover C, anyone who knows, that you could do that with that technology, but you certainly can, and you can see here it is. Because you got sandstone, and you got basically coal and what's called hume, which is coal dirt, basically. It's broke down plant matter, so it goes. And then the question is, how are we going to get down here? We're probably not just going to dig a 110-foot hole. So in this picture, you see a stone feature that was on closer examination. We had seen this feature before in a monument survey, but we didn't factor it. So it's just a standing stone that stands out front, but it's in the shape of a lion. And this is more important than we initially might consider. Because here's the same view from the front, and it has kind of a scallop shape at the top. I'll show you. But at the top of the cliff to my upper left from this photo, there was another shape like we see in that top of that stone, in the top of the cliff, facing the opposite direction. And it just looked odd. I had noticed a bunch of times. And so I thought to myself, what if that shape we see right there could potentially be a rendition of the sail of a ship? And that these two ships are sailing around in a circle around a subject of interest. Now it seems outlandish and it seems crazy. You go, well, that's kind of far-fetched. You could think anything from that. But understanding the lion, the standing stone, the opposing two marks, it made sense. There's a logic to it from their frame of mind. But we have a scanning technology. We can take a look. So let's go see. So we go to that spot and we scan, and there's X. There's the vertical shaft. There's the way in. So this validates not only the technology, but our understanding of what we're doing to begin to break down how they put this place together. Now these certainly are not on the monuments, but they are what I can show you to kind of dramatize a story of how this stuff works. Because I can't go over the thousands and thousands of photos that were taken and alignments and mapping to achieve this. So we did a grid scan. Now this is your shaft again, and it's starting to reveal more things. To a normal person, they see structure, they see a few lines, but somebody who's done enough of the scanning, we see a lot more than that. On the right-hand side of that frame, my mind actually sees a descending tunnel that you can barely notice. And there's structure in it. Now, the blue zones to the left side, those are naturally other structures, but they're up in the upper levels above where the shaft top is. And I say upper levels, but the shafts in the top of that shaft ended up being over 60 feet deep to the top of the cap that they sealed off the vertical shaft with. So this is the layout as it sits on the ground. With our previous scan in the area A, up there at the top left, there's the small 10-foot wide, say, scan there, it's like a 10 by 12, that shows the chamber we want to access. And then, of course, we have, and it's in scale, the vertical shaft to the bottom right. And then the other added graphics are just depth per scan. So as we're descending and scanning, as we descend and scan, this is what's showing up in our frames. The line scans are tracking the tunnels. So we're tracking these tunnels to see where they're going off these to figure out which one's going to go to the load chamber. So we did an excavation on the second area. This is where things started to get interesting, because no longer is the back wall look homogeneous. It does no longer look like natural stratified ground, coal, and hume. It was now jumbled in pieces, large chunks, all compacted together, and in this was what appeared to be the pour off of a smelting process, where you would pour off all the bad metal and everything. The heavier molten feed and what you can separate stays in there for further processing. So samples were taken of this deposit. You can see how rich in iron it is and other minerals that have leached out to its surface during its cooling. That would have been on top of the surface of the ground at some point or another. But what do you do now? Now we've gone beyond the limits, because we've done about as much as we can do with the backhoe. And we did that second excavation and rescanned that shaft. We realized, man, this thing isn't up here. It's still down there. We've got at least from ground level out front 60 foot of depth, and we're going to have to stack another 20 foot of depth or more from the hill slope to be able to get to the top of the shaft. So what do? That's basically the end, and this photograph kind of represents that in a sense. It's like the boulder just fell on you because you're stuck. You can go nowhere anymore. That's it. That's over. Well, the solution is what? What now? It's money. Because in order to go deeper, it's going to get exponentially more expensive. What are you going to do? You've already seen what we've been able to do with a backhoe, which is considerable amounts of work, but we understand the gravity of what comes next. And that's phase 2, the archaeology. Because in order to get money, now we've got to prove the site. We've got a giant hole. What do we got? We have no gold to show for. We have no true artifacts to show for. We have a bunch of assumptions and a bunch of colors on a computer screen and a big bunch of holes we dug. That's all we have. How are you going to go sell that so you can get this thing going? The cost is insane. So first thing we do is put the team archaeologist Stephanie Waldo on the excavation of specific areas around the site that we had felt were old piles. And before we just started digging into them, we just let her go for it so everything could be properly validated. As you can see here, we weren't digging 10 centimeters like the Arc survey did the first time. We were digging feet, 4 feet, 10 feet in an archaeological process, which is an awful lot of work. You can see here just how much material has been removed and how like the rocks are still protruding because all this stuff was picked out. And everything was taken to another station, all the rocks separated, stacked, and screened. Tremendous amount of work. Here you see another area, the area D, which was a foundation they were creating with a stone floor. And that's me digging in the corner, excavating out what ended up being potentially someone's final moments. Because as we excavated this out, we were actually beginning to find the tools they were using the day. They didn't lay tools around, so these tools were being used the day that whatever happened here. Because iron was just damn near as valuable as gold in a sense, because it was more difficult to smelt. And everything usually was hauled over from Europe and not even made here. So you didn't drop anything if you didn't have to. Not in this era. And then we came to this spot where I had been digging in that photo, and once everything was cleared and brushed away, laying there was a chisel. There was no hammer, but the chisel was laying there, and there was this peculiar stain on the ground. And this is what it was. And it ends up being a deposit of iron oxide and other elements that would come from human blood. This was probably the guy's last moments. It's probably when the chisel was dropped and that day went off and everything ended. And then this site was completely covered by the Native Americans after the Pueblo Revolt. They erased all the site. But what was here? So as we began to excavate these areas and get a little further into it, we began to find some really unusual tools. And it ended up being where this location was just about like Area 51 of the 1600s. They were creating things like we've never seen anywhere before, and most of them, what we have seen, is only in the book De Re Metallica, that was comprised in 1541 for the King of France to update him on the top tier of mining technology in 1541. Now, we're not saying these are 1541 tools, but what we are saying is that the design is what was then to be the absolute most modern, most efficient, most well-made alloys and alloy tools that they had at that given time. What's interesting is as we recovered a lot of these, we realized that most of them could be used today. And when we did research on them, we found out that they're not oxidized beyond just a small crust, which has crystallized in all these years and formed just crystals of iron oxide and other elements on their surface. The metal ends up being far superior even to some modern alloys. And as for like some of the ones we have on our table, the rock bars, 10 to 20% estimate, we know at least 10, of most modern steel that we have today. And some of these even show up to contain corundum, which is a conundrum. So we get corundum in them. Now, why did they do this? We read about, and it's type of an alchemy, of crushing gemstones and forging them into the laminate of steel. So we don't know for a fact yet because we haven't cut into it. We've done all surface analysis. But it does tell a little bit of depth. And what we do have is a heavier weight than steel would be. Now, the only weird thing that ever did come up on some analytical work that was done by a friend at Sandia National Laboratories for us, to my buddy who's now deceased, Tony Tucker, was they had a crust of iridium. And they were wondering, is there a natural iridium source? Just has to do with whatever their iron source was. Because part of what we learned was these tools are being made or 100% local material. None of this was being hauled in from Europe, which means they had iron furnaces. They could smelt large quantities of iron. Now, one of the most important and cool tools we found was this chisel, and it's big, and it meets no standard of any type ever recovered that we're aware of outside things that were described in old literature and featured only in D-Ray Metallica. This tool was not hand-pounded by anybody with a sledgehammer. What required this was a massive stamp forge. This isn't a little tool. It's 14 inches long. It weighs 3 or 4 pounds. It would not even be easy to hold and use this all day. And at the tip were extremely sharp points, 2 of them, that were split with a carbon row. And when you tap this thing, it would ring like a damn tuning fork. It was one of the strangest things that we've ever recovered as far as the oddities of what they were doing in metallurgic science. Now, it's super interesting about this tool in itself is the form of it would be compressed forged metal. And the stamp mill would have had to hit this with 5 or 10 tons of force to be able to do this and have a pad big enough to compress the whole thing. So what we'll end up looking at is, that means a machine. And it means a machine that is featured in D-Ray Metallica in the 1540s, the most modern tech. These aren't little. It means there was an industrial operation on this location where they could run massive wheels, whether it was human-powered, animal-powered, or whatever. And these wheels ran big cams and levers on monster trees for shafts. So you might have a tree shaft 20 or 30 inches thick as the axle, and these big wooden pieces. And they made giant wooden machines. And just like a modern stamp mill, these were used to forge superior tools. And none of this was supposed to exist in America whatsoever. What is it doing in an unknown site, south of Santa Fe, New Mexico, in the middle of nowhere? Here we see something else that was kind of fabled. I don't know of anyone else that's ever seen one, but they are described and featured in ancient literature. And these are a wheel off an iron cart. And they were used to haul gold, normally loads of smelted gold. You know, when they would do an assay clip, which is off a load, so they're gonna smelt a load, they run a smelt, they wanna test and see what's the average in that load. Often it was only done every ton. So that they smelt 2,000 pounds of gold. It's an incredible amount of gold. They would run one assay clip on large operations. These carts were used to haul smelted material in and out of storage facilities. They're very small. And one thing we see, of course, that we're always going to see in the measuring systems of a Jesuit is 7 and 14. And this is a 14-inch rim. Okay, so you have a 7-inch center point, which these are the numbers they did all their engineering and they did everything on it. They were crazy about it. Also, in this picture, you can see the wheel and the other artifacts for scale, the large chisel. At the very top, that's the axle that went to the wheel, and it's 14 inches as well. So everything, their geometry tells us an awful lot about how they operated, but this is how they did everything. So it's all particular, and when we find it, we understand what it means. But what it means is they had some reason to have produced the iron carts to cast them here and use these things. The only use we know of was to haul heavy metals, not even iron. Now, you can see there the axles and the wheel are not made out of alloys like the tool. The tool are made of far superior alloys. And below the axle, we have another metal, and that's lead. And that's a hand-pounded sheet of lead. And it's 12 inches long, and it's a little 3 to 4, around 4 inches tall, and it's about, I'd say a 1/16 of an inch or a little more thick. And what we, during research, discovered with this is they were producing these sheets to line wooden boxes for documents for the held for all the mining operations around Santa Fe and the New World were all documented. And they had many copies of these documents, and they would put them in storage areas, and it was all for the auditing that would go by the king. They were supposed to generate it, so this is how they stored them. So this is what we assume would be one of those lead sheets because it fits the parameters exactly. But what that's indicative of, now we've got church documents. So now we've got records and storage of records, potentially. So this is another unique view, and the tool on the right is the rock bar we have on our table. But the tool at the top is probably the most important tool. That's called a lamina. Now that's the mine, because this singular tool was the magic device that allowed them to mine hard rock at a rate that's almost as good, well, in some cases it's as good as drilling and blasting. And it was pretty unbelievable how they used these tools, because they would use them by generating a big old slot in one side of the end of the tunnel, and then they would put this iron block in. It's made of a crazy alloy. And then they would drive in these alloy wedges. And they, by beating these wedges against these tools, they would only put pressure at the back of the crack, not the front. Like a standard wedge just goes in the front and it kind of splits the rock. This didn't do that. They didn't want it to split out little pieces, and they're going into a vertical face. So they would drive all this force into the back until it builds up millions of potential pounds of energy. Enough so that they said when the rock began to sing in a high whine, as in distress, all the men knew to run. Because when that wall gets loose, it's going to take out everybody in that tunnel. And because it bound so much pressure. But in doing this without explosives, they were all able to mine anywhere from 3 to 11 feet a day through hard rock. So when we go a tunnel, we say, how much tunnels in this mountain? Where did they go? What did they do? It was like ancient Rome. If they knew of a water source a mile away, it wasn't that big a deal to literally hit that thing. So then they could use that water for what? Big stamp mills like I described, for wash plants, for services, for all types of things through gravity feed throughout a mine structure. And this is the type of operational standard that most people wouldn't think they'd pull off in America, but it was done frequently and fluently. The only thing is that during the revolt period, most of it was erased from history. Again, this is the same picture. Just shows, the other side of the bar, which is a custom tool too. It's built to have a replaceable head on one side, and then on the other side is meant for pulling large stakes, iron stakes, out of timbers when you're disassembling things. This is a picture of not the entire collection, but of a lot of it anyway. And you can see the variety. And the most important thing, of course, we have that same lead plate front and center. But to its right, we have another one of the strangest things we've ever found. Nobody would want to hold that tool. It weighed around 15 pounds. And if you've ever taken like a 15-pound chunk of iron and just tried to use it all day and do different positions, it's not easy. And these guys are supposed to be this tall. That tool's huge. The chisel next to it is the one that went through the stamp mill. And it's 14 inches. So then look at that one. You're looking at an 18-inch tool. That's really big. It's too big around to wield, too big around to hold. And then it had this depression in it that ran this really strange groove to one side. Flip it over and it was ditto, same thing. Those tools in particular, the iron is so good that there's only a slight crust on it. Other than that, it's absolutely perfect. Now, I never got a chance to analyze that one in particular because of later issues. But these, in particular, could have been something someone may have overlooked for turn-of-the-century old miners' crap. But those aren't railroad spikes. Those are ship decking spikes. That's different. And these are degrading because these were standard iron. It's old, but they're standard iron. But wait, what are those nut and bolt looking things? Did they have nuts and bolts back then? Did they have them in the 1500s? Well, what they had back then was a facsimile of a nut and bolt. Since there was no industrialized anything, and there was no standardized units of measure, every single thing you made was a one-off, and fit the next thing that's a one-off. And as we see in this photo, Each head or each nut that's shown on there has a different shape. Now we have 2 diamonds, we have tapered squares, and we have one that's got 6 sides and a little long, and then we have one that we know any mechanic would never want to use because it's square with round edges. What's the first thing that's going to do? Slip. Now, you can also notice that the ones that can see it clear enough, I'll describe it to you, that each one of what would be the bolt is not round. And the threads don't go around it. Each one has 3 sides, and the only place the threads are on each face of the, not the face, but each point of the 3. And that they would just grind them just on those. And what does that remind us of? That's like a tap and die. And for those of you that don't know, that's a tool that's used to cut threads in metal, because it has relieving areas so the threads can cut. Now, so what we're really seeing is, in a sense, the first self-tapping screws. There would be a little bit of triangular form inside the holes for them to go with, but they're really cutting their way in. These were actually some of the first renditions we've ever researched to be able to find of a nut and bolt, period. And you can see how it kind of evolved into what today we take for granted as a standardized system. But what was the most interesting tool? So, on this particular day, I had a strange idea because I found a glyph panel and I had a weird idea that what they were representing was a tool cache. And that what was being shown to me was a rock bar. And that by that I knew that it was a cache of tools. And it was being kind of put where they were. And everything was hastily stashed at this place. So this was a last minute event. They were probably in denial looking around the valley and seeing the smoke rising and not having a real clue about how bad it was about to get. But somebody with haste has chiseled in and pecked in what looked like, to me, with the symbols and the load, a tool cache. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna find that rock bar today. I know that's a rock bar. I'm gonna find that rock bar today. I don't care what it takes, I'm gonna find it. I told everybody, I ran all over the site all day, I'm gonna find a rock. What are you doing, Rob? I'm looking for a rock bar. I'm gonna find it today. Well, little did I know, I got to the top of this cliff and I came down, climbed down off it, and it's got a steep slope, so I kind of hopped down a little in the slope, and man, it was just like, and I did not hear words, mind you, I didn't hear words, but it was very just like somebody slapped me on the back of the head and said, hey, dumbass, turn around and look up. And I'm not kidding. And I did, and this is exactly what I saw. And I thought, I don't see anything. I don't see anything. And I didn't feel a physical push, but I felt every emotion push. And so I climbed up there and I took a look. And wow, what was sticking hidden in that cliff? I couldn't see it because it was in front of that mineral vein. It was right in plain sight. Turn around, dumbass, look up. Now, it's been sitting there for over 300 years under that little ledge, right off the operation. And I know that that day it got stashed in there, and that there's a pile of tools now down below it. But at the time that was even done, they probably didn't understand what was about to occur. So there we are with our rock bar, our satisfaction, our bit of treasure. But this brings us to phase 3. Now we've got a good archaeological basis. We have a good understanding of what's coming, and we can go out and promote that, and we did. And after a lot of work to gain a finance company and a finance group and to put it all together, first I should say we had to create the finance company. Get investors, get everybody on the same party, have presentations, do the whole 9 yards. Took quite a while. But we eventually did, and we got enough to get phase 3 basically started. Technically, it was a little different described, but for this purpose, this is phase 3. That's the big dig. That's what we've been waiting for. How are we going to get down to this target that we know by heart is there? Now we've got these tools, we've established all the province, we know what's going on. So we put in a modern archaeological laboratory, a field analysis and communication center in these 2 semi-trucks. The North American was a full archaeological field lab, totally built custom on the inside. The other one was a mobile comm center and laboratory from Sandia National Labs. With the gravity of what we were about to work on, and the gravity about what we were going to pull out, with everything that was done, including measurements by a machine made by Bob Fitzgerald, which measured the mass of gold. It rings a harmonic bell, like when someone sings and shatters a glass. We rang the gold with a field that was in 50-mile diameter field. It's over most of small radio stations in broadcast power. And we rang its bell to the maximum amount that the machine could create what's called a phase lock loop. You have to be 200 feet away from this thing when you run it. You have to look at it with binoculars. If not, you'll probably be sterile by the next day. But the point is, we maxed the machine at 150 tons. That's a lot of AU, a lot. We don't know how much is totally down there, but if you go by what we know by math at about 60% alloy, which is what we believe they were, it's going to come into, and equated at that time, into over $20 billion. So what are you going to do? You're just going to go out there and pick up truck and station wagon and do whatever your SUV and throw all this stuff in the back and haul ass to the bank? So going this next step, we don't know when we're about to hit this. So all this prep and all this stuff has to be done, including security, and you can see that car sitting up there in the upper left. This is a long process, and it's not very easy to pull off. People think their dream would be to find something big. And I'm telling you, your dream's not necessarily to find something big, because that's often when the nightmare starts. And as you can see here, bigger holes require bigger shovels. So that's a 35-ton Traco with a 60-inch wide bucket. You can almost pull a Volkswagen into it by width. And then we brought a 966 loader that we're going to use there to build our road and muck it out. And to express that, this is part of the entry ramp into what would be the hole. So when we think, yeah, man, if I had something 80 feet deep, I'd dig a hole and get it. An 80-foot deep, digging a 20-foot hole is unbelievably complex, let alone something you're going to be 9 or 10 stories into the ground. You've seen, if any of you have ever watched Oak Island, you understand what they go to try to achieve and work at these depths, especially in unstable ground. But as you can see here, excavation on the second area started. And for a true representation of the size of the bucket there, that's me standing next, and the bucket's about 15 or 20 feet in front of me. I mean, it's big equipment for big holes. This is looking down on the excavator when the back wall was over 50 feet high. We're now about 4 or 5 feet below the level we considered ground level where the excavator is sitting now. And we're just starting what we consider the hole. Within short time, this is what the hole looked like standing where the excavator just now was. At this point in time, you could pull that 35-ton Traco into the hole, stand at ground level, and you could not see it. That's how deep it was running. So when you think about what type of effort does it take, and is it worth it? It is worth it, because you realize what's below you exists when you go down and you start to validate what you were just scanning. And in this case, you can see on the left-hand side of that ditch, you can see a tunnel, and it's backfilled. This is the upper region of what we saw in the structure in the scan. But the most important part is, we saw the structure in the scan. If this is real, that's real, everything else is probably as well. So we have to take it with that. So now it gets really serious. Now we bring in top dogs, top archaeologists, top geologists from the state of New Mexico. And they take a look, and the guy says, at the bottom there's a layer of rock. And he says, yeah, that layer of rock is 35 million year old. I know it. We know that layer. It goes throughout the valley. And here I am scanning at the bottom of this ditch. And you see me hooked to a rope, and that's really so they can just see where your body's at when they dig it out. Because if any of this collapses at that depth, there's really not anybody going to do anything about it. What else they're going to dig out, which is going to take out anyway, it just doesn't matter. But it's got to be done. And on this side, you can see that same bisected tunnel a little bit clearer. It's completely backfilled, but it's in still loose material. This isn't rock. This could go. But scanning is necessary, so you do the deed and you get it done. And what this revealed was there was something beneath this rock layer, and it was right beneath it, and it looked organic or a shield-like and laying in there. So I told the geologist, but he said, well, it's not going to be possible any woods down there, because I said it might be timbers. He said, well, that layer is 35 million years old. There's not going to be anything under it. And at this point, we are in excess of 90 feet deep. This is probably, I think, 96. And when we broke through the rock layer, which is that white mineral band you can see on the right side of the ditch there, what was it? What's in the circle? Well, something's under this 35 million year old layer of rock that I told this guy is probably not real. And there they are. There's timbers beneath the 35 million year old pour. So I said, are you willing to crunch your words now? Are you going to admit or try to claim we have 35 million year old timbers? They're still wood. He said, well, either way, I'm not going to go against it. I'm sticking by my original evaluation. I said, cool, this is going to get real weird when we dig something out of here that's been cut. And we did. So a wedge comes out of there, all cut, and it's got a knot from the back of it. So you could beat it with a hammer and you couldn't split it. You know how tough knots are if you were trying to cut one or chop through one. But this wedge was very indicative because it had surface marks of a two-handed draw knife or a tool used to shave off material. And a lot of people used hatchets, but not a lot of people carried those around. Here's another timber. And we didn't dendro or carbon this particular one, but we did some of the other ones that were there. And I wish we had this one because these hand-hewn, partially squared to notch together pieces were difficult to get. And we ended up getting them with the machine after we did some of the testing initially. And I kind of wish we had tested these because I know these were original. But regardless, it didn't really matter. When the testing was done on the material, of course, a couple of dates came up because there had been an entry. That backfill tunnel I showed you was done by a group called the KGC. And it was done somewhere around 1901 to 1912 because some of the logs they put in there were dated to 1912. Were dated to 1901. And I think the latest potential date on dendro was 1912. But the KGC were known for accessing Spanish digs. Now, could they have got through the cap? I don't think so. Because when we hit the cap, and I actually couldn't find photos of this file, when we hit the cap, it was a poured cap of a concrete material made with little quartz spheres, spherical sand, like what would be quicksand if you were to hydrate it, lime and basic cement, and then there was quartz spires 1 inch to 2 inches for the aggregate and the concrete. You know how hard quartz is? It's unbelievable how hard the cap was. That machine, I was doing everything in the world to break a chunk off so we could analyze it. And it would just blow powders of smoke and sparks. So we did end up taking a chip off of it. But my point being is this is what was poured on top of the vertical shaft to seal it. And it was completely sealed, which is a horrible situation. Because in coal-bearing strata, once you block the air off, normally you'll build methane. Once the oxygen's gone, no more methane. It'll start go anaerobic, start consuming the methane, and create a gas called hydrogen sulfide, which the condition based on exposure to this gas, 2 breaths, even one at high concentration, they called it the walking death. Because guys would come out of the hole, able to walk, able to talk in 2 minutes, and then they collapse and they're gone. Because the blood can no longer get into the circulatory system once you inhale it. Now we know that also in that condition builds pressure. And in this area, they've had flameouts, burnouts, they had 30 people burned in mine situation because of hydrogen sulfide, because it's extremely flammable. The worst part is it only takes a low concentration to take people out. Just the main shaft we imaged, if it's not even under much pressure, was enough hydrogen sulfide to be fatal to people for a mile by 30 feet thick if that escaped out of that shaft. we saw there's tunnels going to other rooms. We have no idea how vast this is. We know it's under pressure. And this is when things got tricky. Because where's the gold? This is being asked by the finance team, because in the next round, what's about to happen? Costs are going to go way the hell up. We now have to deal with a mine or a structure full of hydrogen sulfide to get to these targets. How are you going to do that? So a plan was developed to do the whole thing. But during this, we analyzed what we were digging through in the walls. And that was sheets of gold. And it's deposits of gold in humate shale. Second time in the world it's ever been seen. The first time was in Welsh deposits overseas. And it wasn't a little bit. It was a lot. But at this time, all their mineral rights are owned by the same old coal company and the derivatives of from that area to begin with. We could not touch it. And they knew it, and we knew it, and everybody knew it. And I have samples. Hell, we're doing science archaeology. I can collect stuff. But there's no way we can remove a bucket off this site without being immediately taken over by the Fed and screwed. So what are you going to do? We built a road out of it. We dug it out, and everything we could find that was big, and it's in that road to this very day. And off of the coal seam in itself, it was 0.187, which is considerable per ton, an ounce per ton. And that's not on the seam, that's just in the coal and humate around it, which is also worth money as a soil treatment. So this place really is a gold mine. We had no idea it would be there naturally. This gave us the whole reasoning why they made the tunnels. It's perfect, because when you trap this stuff with moisture and high sulfur coal and humate, you're guaranteed to get methane. With that cap board, you are guaranteed to get hydrogen sulfide. Nobody's getting your stuff, not being able to deal with it. And they knew how to do it. This is another picture, and I'll tell you that vein structure right there is 6 or 7 inches across, and it's about a 1/16 of an inch thick sheet that just continues off in veins. The white you'd think would normally be quartz, but it's not actually quartz, it's calcium, bromide, and some other stuff that came up through that hydrothermal vent when this was deposited. So the gold that deposited here may have sulfur dust and be deposited onto iron sheets in places, but it's almost pure once you get it extracted and separated. Approving the cache. So in order to get these guys, of course, to go the next step, so me and my team don't end up to be features in this thing forever, we needed independent testing, which Frank Kasser, which was here today, dealing with some tech down below, was the original German developer for OKM technology. So we brought him in. I'd worked with him in the past, and he was going to do the independent testing for the finance company. And I have every bit of respect for Frank to this day, even though things might have got a little squirrely at one point. But he did the independent testing. And what showed up, his secondary and a third party from Arizona State University, a scientist there who went over the data after we both repeated scans, all showed the identical same thing in the room. And different harmonic values and different forms of testing showed the weights we had discovered, the new tech by Bob Fitzgerald measured the mass. So it became, and now with what we've got in the walls, we have the evidence of the operation, the industry, the heavy smelting, the mining, that all justified loads that big could be there. We have the source, the operation, we have the indication by the assay clips and the whole 9 yards. What's there is there, and there's no question now. But the results of the results. We call this Sierra Madre syndrome. Right? You ever seen Treasure of the Sierra Madre, old treasure movie with Humphrey Bogart? Right? They don't make it back, let's put it that way, because instantaneously they start looking over each other's shoulder. When this thing became real, even with a group of finance people who had been getting reports, witnessing the dig in the whole 9 yards for a couple of years at this point, everything changed. They came to me and thought they had the power, and I guess they did at the time, to reduce my cut, which had started out at 70, had dropped to 50. Then we agreed to reduce it to 30. Then I said our bottom dollar is 17%. Then they tried to write me out and reduce our component down to 2% of the find. 2%. They didn't do anything. They're sitting in Vermont, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire. These are bankers. These are guys who never put their foot in the dirt. Well, it didn't bother me in the sense that I understand that greed. And I understand it, so I kind of expected it. So I said it didn't bother me. Sure, it bothered me, it pissed me off. But at the same time, I expected it. It wasn't like it was a surprise. But what was a surprise is we needed the last phase of funding because of the potential hazard to my team and the population of this whole little valley. It's in a populated area, believe it or not. We did this and no one even in the local little town knew we were really doing it. It was tough to hide. But regardless, we could wipe everybody out in this canyon, and the financiers did not give a rat's butt. And I had to express this, you guys, and they wanted operational control, and they were not going to do further work to guarantee safety if a blowout happened. They said, if it happens, we'll deal with it. I said, well, we don't have robots. Who's going to be doing the work? If it happens, it's too late. There's no buffer zone. So this is where kind of the internal war started. Because we improved the site. They didn't care who got wasted. They didn't want to drop anything extra because the next sum was going to be spending. We've now got to flood and burn off all this hydrogen sulfide out of this place. And we have to do it in a method that can be done right in a population area. It's not like it couldn't be done. It can totally be done. And we got most of the equipment to do it. But they wouldn't go. They were ignoring the reality. They didn't care, and they were cutting their own throats in the process. They were ignoring the reality of what it would take to make their own dreams come true. They thought by reducing my potential involvement, or our team's potential involvement, which is a pretty good sized group by this time, that they would have an open avenue to do it their way, to distribute their way, to walk with all this. When the value got measured, when the material was proven and validated, it wasn't too much for them to handle. They weren't making cognitive decisions anymore. Sierra Madre syndrome. What happened in the end? Well, I got a hole, and it's not my trip. And they're about to crack this thing. It's my find. That's not cool. But what's not cool is they're about to try to, they could waste, and they're probably gonna have a lot of people get KO'd, and there are a lot of people in this valley is gonna suffer from this thing. All hell's gonna break loose. This thing's gonna get nabbed by the Fed, or whatever, it doesn't matter. And no one's ever gonna hear a stinking word. Hell, they just had a major gas release. They shut down the roads and evacuate people over next to nothing. This whole valley never would have known it was pulled out of there, and neither would anybody else. So, being we had the rights to do this under all laws and everything, and I know people think it's important, impossible, or it's tough, and it's not. You just have to do it. I called OSHA and MSHA, who had every bit of respect for us because we were trying to do something big nobody else would do. And they all got those jobs in the mining and safety hazard industry because they all dreamed of treasure. They all dreamed of finding things. A lot of geologists are the same way. Then they get in school, they get their careers, it kind of goes on. But when they see something like this happen, they want to go for it. It's part of, they feel it. So I thought they'd be out in a few days to deal with these guys because they had brought in another contractor and with another excavator, the owner of a company, to start the excavation. Now they didn't realize that that actually broke the Federal Antiquities Act. And if he had started digging with the track hoe, the Fed would have just taken the place over immediately. Because you can't hire a third party. It's got to be your team doing the work. You can rent the hoe. But if that guy's on it, he has to be written into that project. Because that's the only way he's actually aware of the liability and the danger to himself and others. So he becomes an unknowing party, which you can't have involved. He's also a third-party contractor, which you cannot have involved. So, in essence, they were about to cut their own throats and ruin it all anyway, one way or another. It didn't matter. But when I called OSHA and MSHA, they said, we'll be there tomorrow. And they have to drive up about, 130, 140 miles to this place. And they both showed up, and they beat me to the login time. And they got in the gate, and they went in there before I ever got there and canceled the whole damn thing, rounded everybody up, started writing up citations, and said, we'll enforce these citations. They're 50 grand a pop for every adult standing here on this project. If you don't smooth this out, what you already did, backfill it, make it flat. We want to see the walls change to this and this, and you don't touch it after that. because OSHA wanted everything taken to grade, which is a certain slope for that material. So not only did they prevent them from going after it, they actually made them pay this contractor to then reclaim everything and fill it back up to a degree and pad it all out. And let them know you can't touch this project, period, going forward because of the hazard to society. They well knew what was about to happen. But I say with that is I'm going to wrap this presentation up. I'm going to say if you're out there doing the deed, keep digging. Thank you.
Tell them to turn the lights on, Robert.
Turn the lights on, Robert.
Lights, and then has anybody got any questions for Robert?
I got a question.
We got a question right here.
Matt. So, I mean, adits were used. What's the topography like where you're talking about it? This is my first question. It's not super steep, right? It's more bad.
Repeat the question.
Yeah, the question was, considering adits and other forms of entries, what was the topography like around that area?
Yeah.
And that kind of determines what kind of structures you're going to install and don't mind what we should look for, right? So, being that the tunnel feature was into a load and ore body was that heavy, other entrances probably weren't creating the main ore body, except for that particular one, and then it would be extracted process where they could control it. Because there's not a lot of exploratory or tunneling going on as much as there is just ore recovery. So an adit just being a side access generally to a winch or windlass.
I'm going to take it a step further and not go with it. So I'm thinking outside the box here, and forgive me, just I'm listening and super fascinated, and I know a fair amount. Is there a place when you could go from way lower and then come up to get to it, and then figure out a way to trap that hydrogen sulfide, which, if it was done right, may not go back through those fissures because
Yeah. So the idea was that if there was topography or a basin or a draw or something that was lower, below what our subject is, we could go and make a lower entry and avoid hydrogen sulfide deposition. Hydrogen sulfide is heavier than air, so it falls and it's dense. That's why it'll flow down a valley and take out like a whole population. It'll just cruise over. So if you were to open a lower hole, it would actually be the first place it would want to exit. Now, and I get the concept of what you're saying, but the basic topography here didn't support drains, and that's usually why you have lower, which are generally not considered adits, more tunnels, but they're drains and things to muck out debris out of a mine. And so everything goes downhill. Gold goes uphill, then it goes downhill. So they would take out all the muck out the lower shafts and deposit it where they really didn't care. And it also draws and stuff because it'll move it away. But gold was usually witched out vertically. Then it went downhill to wherever the processing plant was. So it was carried uphill very minimum. It was witched uphill and then carried downhill. So, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
So is that a permanent injunction forever and ever? There's no more recovery of that?
Well, it kind of goes like this. The landowner, her husband tried to off himself later on, probably as a result of the frustration, or her boyfriend, or whoever the guy was. And he was not the nicest guy in the world anyway. And then he later passed, and it's sitting there in situ. And they've been offered an awful lot for property, but of course, with the understanding what's there, she won't move on it, and she's not going to be able to touch it. And that's just where it flies to this day. It just really is. And it's not easy to be what's considered a knowing party, so you could go attempt a recovery like that. You really got to put your feet in the fire first, because the Fed wants somebody to be liable, period. And they need to know a knowing party to prosecute, because you can't prosecute somebody for doing something they don't know about. They need them to be knowing. So you say that's what Kryder Exploration does. Hey, we're the knowing party, we'll take the hit. There's not a lot of people that would go and jump into that realm. So it's going to be, who knows how long it'll sit there.
So the finance company, were they cut out forever by that injunction?
Well, what actually happened is I created the finance company so they could operate. But they were so gung-ho, they took monies, made accounts, spent monies, and I never signed it over to them. And so in the end they had already, and they took in, I think, 25, 26, and I think the limit was 23 people you could have by the Securities and Exchange Commission to create that group. And they overdid it. And then they spent monies from this account, done with money without me signing the company over to them. It all became illegal transactions and fraud. Plus, this woman actually ran the Department of Economic Development for the state of New Mexico. And she spent 40 grand that was set aside for gross receipts taxes, and she spent it on new vehicles. So when they audited me and came and talked to me, they said, you have 36 grand of gross receipts taxes. I said, well, no problem. Go tell her to sell those cars. Who's she? Oh, well, she runs the Department of Economic Development. That's it. They said, here, call this guy. We don't have nothing to do with this thing. We're done. I called the guy. He never returned my call. He did one day. I didn't return his. That was it. It was gone. They just let it go. It was like they didn't even open the can of worms. So, go ahead.
Is there any idea to bring in a gas company to drill down and extract the...
So the question is, was there any plan or idea to bring in a gas company and drill down and extract the hydrogen sulfide and clear the area? And no, we were going to do it ourselves. So we designed, and we're building the gas collar to drill the cap with a sealed bit and to evacuate out the top of the bit through a burner. And then this would be burned off, continual fire, propane-driven burner at the top. And then what you do is when the pressure drops down, the gas is still heavy. It's still filling the entire zone. It's just not under pressure. Then we hook up a 900 CFM, 200 PSI, Ingersoll Rand compressor that could blow the doors off the Houston Astrodome if you seal them. And then we plumb that down. What we actually do is dig next to the shaft. We drop a steel culvert. We bury an 8-foot steel culvert. We bury the whole culvert. We cap that culvert. We go down and have a valve that goes in that we remote, and we hook the compressor to the top of that. And we start introducing air into the system, blowing out the hydrogen sulfide, burning it off.
They didn't want to go for that.
They didn't want to spend the money to do any of that. They wanted us to dig that damn gold up. You see. Now I had a question.
Hey, Rob, thanks so much for making the long drive up. You guys can, like, we have a very large steel bar, possibly recovered. What do you think that bar was used for?
So normally that's a multi-use tool, best we can understand. And based on some of the design work we saw, like in D-Rave and stuff, they would make cap tips. So and so they could be hardened separate stamp forms, whatever they're going to do, and then they would attach them to that end and pin them. Then they'd use the bar to move, pry, do whatever they're going to do. If they wear out or bust the tip, they replace it, which is like another very novel thing. And it was a multi-use tool because the other side of it was obviously for extracting the spikes, or would be the major iron anchors that were used in heavy beams. Any other? Any other questions? Okay. I want to say thank you very much for everyone. Thank you very much for having me. Everybody.
Hey, Robert, we haven't given you one of these yet, have we? Hey, it's not much, but man, it's our appreciation for you, and thank you. And give them all we can. Let's do some quick little raffles real quick. First, we're gonna do the Skinwalker Ranch one. I got Chad Smith. Chad Smith, you're the lucky winner to Skinwalker Ranch. Overlooking, this is the campground that overlooks Skinwalker Ranch. They're going to give you a tour. Mark will get you the information. Hang around after we do these and we'll get your information or get you their information. So, nice job. Okay, this is going to be for the Fisher Pinpointer. Thank you, Fisher, for donating a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of people that donated to us, so thank you all. But for the Fisher Pinpointer, purple, 391775. Purple 391775. Purple ticket 391775.
There we go.
Hey! Hey, they tell me that these pinpointers from Fish are one of the top of the line, so I hope you got a way to use it. Awesome. 391775, lucky winner! And thank you. Thank you for your donations and for doing the raffles. Next, this is from Robert Kryder, and he's donated this to us, and his company's Treasure Hound. Check him out on the internet, his web page. Robert, man, get over here and tell these guys your web page, because he's got a lot of great deals, got a lot of great things, and you need to check him out and help support him, because him and Fisher supported us. It's green, 141701. Green, 141701. Green, 141701.
That's not that. They're playing.
Oh, okay. Going once. Going twice. 141701. Gone. White. 047524. White 047524. White 047524. This is Dan Lowe's wife. If anybody knows who Dan Lowe is?
Yeah.
Cool. Hey, thank you for supporting us. Have we got any more? Let's see. We got another a Fisher. Oh, we got a Fisher backpack. Blue. 6'8". It says coin trainer on the ticket. So, blue coin trainer ticket. 6'8", 6253. Blue 6866. Whoops, sorry. 686253. We got any? Nobody going once? Going twice? Orange 900941. 900941. Wow, we got a winner. Hey, thank you for supporting us, man. We really appreciate it. Thanks for coming. Cool. No, that's good.
What is it?
Oh man. That's nice. Thank you. From the veterans, honeycombs, calcite. Man, that's a nice little thing. One of a kind. Hey, thank you. 251. 9801-251. I can't throw. Green 9801-251. Green 9801-251. No takers? Is it you?
No.
Oh, you got me one. Orange. 900952. Ah. I'll wrap my arm. Did you give it to him? Oh, he was supposed to get this. Oh well. The next one gets this. He was supposed to get this honeycomb horse thing. That's all right. You want this or that? It's only up to you. You can have that or this. White. 046751. Which one do you want? This or that? Okay. Yeah. White 046751. Oh, man. People are here. Cool. Yeah, he gets that. Hey, you know, as we're coming to the end of this, we really appreciate you guys. It wouldn't happen without you. There's a lot of knowledge here that came here this year. I hope you took advantage of that and picked each other's brains. Yeah. We'll, White 046755. Oh, I think we might have a winner. 046755.
What are we doing? It's a double winner. Oh, God. Got all those.
Well,
I'm going to start checking them.
I think we'll save them for next year, maybe, because they were held over from last year. Hey, thank you guys. And with that done, I think that's the end of it. That's a wrap. And hey, we can't thank you guys enough, you know, and this has been terrible getting here, all the work we put into it, but you guys make it all worthwhile, and we appreciate you. Hey, you guys have a great night. If you're going home tonight, be careful. And we'll see you next year.
All right. Woo! What's this? What am I giving to these? That was for the guest speakers and breakout people.
I really appreciate you, man. Thank you. How was it? Awesome. Hey. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome.
So the individual who won the campground, can you come down here to the guy in the bright green shirt? Oh, there he is. Lucky winner. You should be scared. They do crazy stuff over there.
Terrible.
So if everybody's interested in going out to eat, the Wells Club said that they would stay open for everybody here. If they showed up before 10, the Wells Club. It's over here on Main Street. Over there on Main Street. It's like by Zion's Bank.
Did we already give you one of these? Did you get one? Jeez, Randy. Thank
Mark Robinson. Guy right here helping you with tickets. Thinking for right now.
Yeah. Buddy, you going home or you sticking around? I'm coming. Nice meeting you. So you guys be careful. Hey, Garth. Hey, I'm glad you liked it. Here. Garth.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Nice to meet you.
Hey, nice meeting you. Thank you for coming out. Thank you.
Thanks, Trevor.
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks. It wouldn't happen without you guys.
Let me try something.
Thank you guys.
Oh my goodness. Send it to Daryl Leela QST at Stratanet. That's an email. You're typing in.
Man, we gotta. Did you guys get this? Did everybody get this online?
What you do? Because I everything went well.
Which is
That's Stratanet.com.
yeah, Stratanet. Every year it's
Dot STRATA.com.
No, I think so. No.
I feel like we're
If not, I'll get it. This is what it looks like.
Next year, if it's the same division, we'll plan our trip.
Well, the first year it was up in the same place, but the weather was good, so it wasn't hot, you know, because it's a little more.
that should all yeah, there it is.
Oh, second, I gotta see this dinosaur.
Yeah. There's the dinosaur gone to the lake.
There you go. Did you have one that was out on the out of the water?
I don't have that one on my phone. That's just it. Yeah.
I think I better go get those kids.
Yeah, that'd be good.
John, did you get us posted?
Yeah, you did. Love the Bigfoot.
Well, what did you think, John?
So you said that you're gathering together to have a team or something?
Yep, yep.
What is this? What is this?
I don't know, and I was talking to John. That's how you get sued.
Daryl's trying to get down. Yeah. He's like, get down. That's not safe.
I was talking to the computer. So we told me $200 over here. I said, just take a chunk, go down and store by a bunch. Let us know where it's going. That is a great symbol. This is you? No, this is me here. So it's like, yeah, it's not like a line. It is a great place. It doesn't line up to get picked up. So if it was a reflection from a phone or something, the weather picked up, it's like no, Andy said that she would thank you for that. That was good job. That's how we did the rest of the office. She can hear me.
What's good? Buy that car?
Yeah, but we got cookies and stuff. The Missouri boys went along, and I said, "What's the place?" I don't know where they are. It's not damn down there. That was it. There was some good like last time. It was all bad. I left it. We left it in the ticket taker. You got your reward. Did I give it to you? No.
Oh, yeah. I think my wife had it.
I don't know. This is the first year, 26 years that we've had schools. How do you feel about it? Good.
Well, I hope I'm alive next year.
I don't know what should we do.
I think we're gonna.
Right.
What are we gonna do?
No. Have you seen Dave at all?
Yeah, I was gonna go over here. Why don't you
go see him? Ask him.
I mean, is he the one who put all this out? Yeah.
Okay. And I know they're going to be here tomorrow. Mindy said we could.
Yeah. See if he's going to do it tonight or tomorrow.
Probably both.
We just walked in and you already got yours done. What about all this? You start pulling down.
They never ended up being so those ones with this plastic black cap pop off. Now that's really like that backs out. The top piece, I leave it the whole thing bungeed on and pop off the sign off that top T. And then the straight pull, and there's some wing nut. There's a bungee around the black tablecloth right there, and in the back all 41 ball bungee. And then there's just some wing nuts and some bolts, 2 bolts on each leg going through the table legs. So the wing nut didn't spin out, there's no tool.
You want to go with him and grab a
I got my screw gun. Okay. I've got a build bit on.
Okay. I'll start working on some of this stuff.
Can you take the
Hotel room unless you need me.
No, I don't need you. Let me, oh man, I got a bunch of these. I had a box. Let me see if I can find my box.
What's it look like?
It's over here. I can get all this stuff.
Are you going to stay and tear stuff down and do that tomorrow?
I am.
You're going to be late?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'm probably going. My blood sugars are up and down.
You better go.
I'm almost.